Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is it. Here we are. The final countdown, right? It feels a little anticlimactic, but also climactic at the same time. So I just wanted to make a quick video kind of updating you on my election predictions, on what I think is going to happen tomorrow, generally, who I think is going to win, what my reasoning is, and also just kind of give something I think is maybe a little bit more important, not a little bit, actually, a lot more important, big picture encouragement, just kind of checking in on the state of things, where we are as a society. So I'll start with the second one, actually, because I think this is more important. So I've seen in the last 4 days articles from NBC and Huffington Post about why what we're experiencing is like an actual apocalypse, is an actual dystopian future. NBC did an article where they interviewed the writers of V for Vendetta and all the uncanny similarities between that movie, and Huffington Post talked to some religious experts about why this really is the end of the world. I've seen numerous articles and reports and tweets from people, whether you're in Washington, D.C. or New York or Los Angeles or Chicago, about how all these major metropolitan areas are boarding up their shops and their windows, preparing for tomorrow. And I had this thought, I shared this in the video I made with Kevin the other night. I think that I had this thought on Saturday, I think it was, where I was getting some stuff ready. We were going to have a bonfire with my in-laws. And I was watching the sun go down. For some reason, I just had this picture in my mind of like the movies The Purge, where people were kind of, nervously looking out the window as they lock the doors and try to settle in to survive the night. And that's not reality. Now, what I'm not saying is that there won't be unrest tomorrow. That's the problem. All of that unrest is based on something that is not fundamentally rooted in reality. We have developed a fear and a hatred and a disgust and a distrust of our fellow citizens based on, their political viewpoints or their preferred presidential candidates or whatever. And I think a lot of that is the legacy media stoking those fires of mistrust, stoking those fires of hatred, and moral superiority in a lot of cases. And so the first thing I wanted to say, and what I think is most important, is whatever happens tomorrow, understand that the legacy media on either side will do whatever they can to keep you gripped and dependent on them for, what's happening with all the violence in the election and everything. They will embellish, or they will ignore, or they will distort. And I just want to remind you that, your neighbors are not your enemy. Very few people are truly evil. Most people are just regular folks. And there's very few just legitimately evil, malevolent people out there. Your neighbors, just because they vote differently or have different signs in their yards than you, they're not evil. They might say things that are offensive to you. They might say things that frustrate you. They might say things that don't line up with your perceptions of reality. I say this, everything I'm saying applies to whether you're on the right or on the left. It doesn't matter. This is all true. And that's the problem, is that we have these kind of weird, again, what Eric Weinstein calls malware. I think we have these malware programs running where our mind subconsciously thinks it's executing the program for morality, or executing the program for critical thinking, or executing the program for rational thought or analysis. And it's actually executing something completely different. And that includes how we assess people with different views now. And I've talked about this before, but I just wanted to remind you guys that no matter what happens tomorrow, like no matter who you voted for, I don't see you as my enemy based on that. And I don't think you should see the people around you as your enemy based on who they vote for. That's just it's an absurd contention. You know, we're all Americans. There are certainly people that are acting in a way that is malicious, that is misleading, that is trying to sow those seeds of division. But I would like it if we don't let those people win. And the way we do that is by not buying into the narratives that, you know, we should hate each other. And I would actually tell you, to give you a little bit of a preview of the things I want to do after the election has all been done and resolved, is focus on the people who are actively trying to get you to hate your neighbors and hate people that disagree with you. Left, right, center, I don't care. That's where I'm shifting my focus, because those parasites, and they're operating parasitically, those bad actors, whatever the incentives are causing them to do that, are operating so recklessly in the worldviews that they're building into us, you know, again, left or right, that we just have to reject it. We have to. I wrote about this in my piece that I think I published yesterday, where I explained why I'm voting for, or why I already did vote for Donald Trump. And one of the main reasons, if you haven't read it, is that we cannot let the legacy media succeed in a lot of ways, right? So the disinformation and misinformation that we've seen over the last several years has been primarily a left-wing thing. But, you know, the sowing of division and sowing of mistrust and animosity between people on different ends of the political spectrum, that has been going on just as much on the right as on the left for a long time. So I don't care what side of the spectrum you're on, whoever is encouraging hate and fomenting hate of our fellow citizens for made up or exaggerated reasons, I'm coming for you. So that's my encouragement to you guys. Don't buy into the hate. Don't buy into the fear. And at the same time, be careful. Scott Adams said it really well yesterday. He said, be cool, but be prepared. But be cool. Be cool. Be excellent to each other, right? So that's the first thing, is I just wanted to remind you that the people that voted differently than you aren't your enemy. I don't see you as my enemy based on how you voted in this election or any previous election. There are things that could check that criteria. You know, if someone, you know, does things that I can see them doing, like they're actively threatening me or something like that, then yeah, then that's a different thing. But just, I voted this way, you know, you voted this way. That's not the recipe for enemies in a functioning society. Now, I said that and I'm like, well, are we really in a functioning society? It's not a recipe, you know, for anything good or reasonable. Anyway, so here's my prediction about who is going to win the election. Now, what I didn't say was who's going to win the presidency, because there are a lot of variables here. Okay, but who's going to win the election? I think I've actually landed on the conclusion I think Trump is going to win. And I've said this. I said it right after the first debate. I'm like, he loses. You know, I don't know what he can do to salvage this. And then after the last debate, you know, they only did the two. The second one, I said, I'm increasingly entering coin flip territory. And so my doubt of my original prediction had been and has been growing for a couple of weeks now. So I want to kind of clean up the first statement I said about, like, there's a lot of other things that could happen. I do not think there's a high probability of whatever kind of attempts at meddling in the election will fundamentally succeed in overthrowing or countering the results. So what I'm not saying is that there isn't potential for malfeasance. Of course there is. We have about 100 million people have already voted in person or by mail. And there are places that are already counting those, have been counting those. We know there are issues with the mail-in voting. My point is that I don't think those are going to be decisive. though there's absolutely opportunity for things. But I don't think that if Trump loses, that it will be because of that. At least as of right now, I don't see that. Now, if someone says, after the election, they're counting votes or something happens and they're like, but look what happened here, depending on what the evidence is, I could say, yeah, no, that sounds really sketchy. They need to look into that. But as of right now, even though the opportunity is there, I think with the mail-in, in-person stuff, especially places that have already been counting them, the fact that there's like some results just sitting there that aren't being counted in real time, and it's a lot of results, I think that does create opportunities. I don't think they'll be decisive. There's the other fact that we're in a situation where both sides, no matter which side wins, the other side, like whoever loses, will contest the results. That creates a lot of issues in and of itself, how either side responds to that. They will contest the results. So, however that manifests could create another host of issues. But I'm saying who will win the election, not necessarily who's going to wind up president, but who will win the election. All right. So I'm going to kind of walk you through briefly. I don't want this to be too long, so I want to be able to actually upload it. Walk you through kind of some of the things, the ways my reasoning has changed. And actually, first, I'll tell you why I thought he was going to lose. So originally, I was looking at all of the polling data, and I took all of it at face value. Okay. And I'll explain, what's the difference between taking all of it at face value and saying all of it's fake. Those are two different things. And I don't think those are the only two choices you have. But I was taking all the polling data at face value. That's one. I was also looking at things like how were conservatives responding to questions about Trump's coronavirus response. And those, he was overwhelmingly, conservatives were saying that they didn't approve of his coronavirus response. I was looking at job approval ratings in some places. I was looking at who do they trust on the economy in some places. And so the data of how conservatives were conceptualizing Donald Trump, it seemed like the enthusiasm was waning, So there was that. I also factored in that first debate performance. I think prior to that, I would have said, I don't know. I need to see how he does. And as I explained in my video before then, I said I think there legitimately are a lot of people who are undecided. And there's a lot of data to support that. And then the people who were undecided there's this other data, I broke it down in some other videos, I'm not going to get into it here, but the people who hadn't decided who they're going to vote for kind of shrank. Now, what's interesting is that after the second debate, if you look at the viewership for that one, it was down from the first debate, and it was down from the last debate, from the Clinton-Trump debate in 2016. But the proportion of people or the portion of people that watched the last presidential debate compared to who had already voted because of all this coronavirus craziness was way high. So it showed that there was still, I think, a high degree of interest in what was going to happen there. And so I think that the second debate mattered actually a lot more than I probably gave it credit for. So I'll kind of give you my framing, and then you can point out any flaws you see here. That's fine. I will also point out some flaws in my own framing here, but I'll do that kind of at the end. But my framing is, there are people who will say, well, that thing doesn't really matter. That thing doesn't really matter. I think Jonah Goldberg was talking about rally sizes yesterday, and he's like, I don't think this matters. It probably matters, but probably doesn't matter as much as people think, right? And so I think there are a lot of things where people go, yeah, that matters, but I don't think it matters that much. But the direction that it matters is in Trump's favor. So in, it might have been Outliers. I can't remember which book it was. Malcolm Gladwell writes about how, actually when it comes to plane crashes, it's not usually one thing that goes wrong. It's usually like 7 different things that they add up, and the confluence of these 7 things is what crashes the plane. And so the argument I would make is there's actually a lot of little things that aren't decisive on their own. But when you add them up, I think they could be decisive, especially since, I'm not ready to say I think it's going to be some Trump landslide thing. I don't think that's the case. I've said that for a while. I still don't really see the argument for that. But if we go into this saying this is going to be close, it's probably closer than it seems, right? So I go back to one of the things I said before, which was, well, actually, I'll mention it here in a minute, but it's probably closer than it seems. Then if you were to add up a bunch of little things that don't matter that much, but they do matter in favor of Trump, add those together. And I know that the metaphor I use is a plane crash. So you could say, oh my gosh, the plane crash is Donald Trump winning, or something like that. I'm just saying that add those together. I think that could be decisive in him winning the election. So I made a list of them. So one of them is the rally sizes and enthusiasm. Okay. Now I made a whole video about how we shouldn't use rally sizes or enthusiasm generally as our primary metric, or signs, and flags as our primary metric for, gauging enthusiasm for voting for either of these candidates. I think that's correct. At the same time, I think that all of these rallies he's been doing over the last couple of weeks, the guy is just a machine. He's been doing like 5 a day for the last several days all over the country. There was that one in Pennsylvania the other day that, turned out like 58,000 people. That does something in terms of energizing and creating momentum going into election day. It also does something where people who might have previously thought they were alone or thought that they were crazy and thinking about voting for him, I think it makes them more comfortable in voting for him. So I do think that the enthusiasm does matter. It just doesn't matter like a whole lot because of how much hatred there is for Trump. Now, as we've gotten closer and people have been framing this as a binary between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, I think the person of Joe Biden as actually an unknown entity has tempered a lot of that hatred for Trump. One of the things I explained this to Kevin after the second debate, I think it was, is that Joe Biden, what his appeal was, he was perceived as a known entity, a return to normalcy. Joe, come on, who Joe is. And so people, without even knowing whether or not they believe that, get a sense of comfort and security from at least perceiving that, there is, I think I do know what to expect here. And the more Biden has refused to answer certain questions, and the stuff with Hunter Biden, Kamala Harris, what it does is it reduces the known entity properties of Joe Biden and moves him into unknown entity territory. Now, I'm not saying he is now entirely an unknown entity territory, but one of the things that gives him an edge, or gave him an edge, was the perception that he was a known entity. And that perception has fundamentally changed in the last month or so, especially, are you going to pack the Supreme Court? Are you going to get rid of the filibuster? Are you going to, all these other things? People are starting to go, actually, I don't think I know. And they're thinking about it because they're now looking at the binary, not just how do I feel about Trump, but how do I feel about the binary? And they're looking at Biden and going, I'm not sure if I do. I'm not sure if I do know what to expect here. Because the closer they get to it, the more they're thinking about the implications and the consequences of it. So I think that the enthusiasm has waned, and that's evident in the polls already tightening, which we'll get to polls here in a second. But I think that the momentum that Trump gains from these rallies and from the perceived enthusiasm, the fact that there are these huge rallies in places like Orange County, I think, I want to say Beverly Hills. I don't know a lot about the geography of Los Angeles and the outlying area, but maybe Beverly Hills is in Orange County. That's probably true. Anyway, so my point is that it does matter. And so actually that's 2 points. If we're going to say there's 7 things at minimum to crash a plane or to swing the election, I'm going to stop using the plane crash framing. Maybe 7 things that might accumulate to swing it to Trump's favor. The enthusiasm in the rallies do matter because of the perception and the comfort they give. The fact that Joe Biden is increasingly appearing as an unknown entity, that does matter. Here's the other thing this is one I can't explain in terms of the way it lines up with the polls, is that the Republicans have been blowing out the Democrats in terms of registering new voters. Now, there's a few states where that's not the case. And some of those are important states. But by and large, Republicans have been just blowing Democrats out in terms of registering new voters in each of these states. So if there is such a shift in people wanting to elect Joe Biden, why are Republicans registering new voters in record numbers? I don't know. But those are all new people that are entering into this that are presumably going to be voting for Donald Trump. So that's another one of those things. That actually might not even be a little thing, right? But that's a third thing. How do you calibrate the, or plug in, wait, all these new registered voters in these states, and I like to have comparisons for these things. So I don't know what that looked like in 2016. I don't know what that looked like in 2012. Okay. So fair enough. But if you just look at the comparison between Democrats and Republicans are just blowing them out in most states. I think in places like Arizona, Democrats are doing a little better. This was a few weeks ago, so that might have changed. So there's that. Record Black and Hispanic support of Donald Trump, or just a GOP candidate more broadly, especially among Black men. The approval rating of Donald Trump among just African Americans that are polled has given us some crazy high numbers that we can't explain, but you're not really seeing a huge amount of enthusiasm, like in terms of grassroots enthusiasm for Joe Biden among Black voters. What's crazy is you see all these articles in like NBC News. I saw a few. Actually, I've seen a lot of these, mostly in NBC, some in HuffPo, some in CNN, where it's like this core group of people in this Latino or this Black community are trying to get people to turn the tide for Joe Biden. And another way to look at that story is there is a small group of people in this community who are seeing that the other people around them don't agree with them. And so they're trying to get out there and canvass people to change their minds. So that's really a story of like grassroots, that would be flipped historically, right? It's like, here's the grassroots movement of a few Republican people in these communities trying to convince the people in their community to join the Republicans. But I've been seeing a ton of stories about how here are the Democrats trying to convince the people in their community to join them. So that paints a different picture in that. So, I don't know I'm very curious, obviously we all are, to see what those numbers are going to be. But I think that, over the years, the real stories of how Donald Trump has handled himself and the support he has among influential Black figures I think they are going to loom larger than the kind of some of the fake narratives about what a racist Donald Trump is. So there's that. The other one is polls being wrong. Okay. So, and I wrote down for any reason. So do I think the polls are wrong? I think in a lot of places they are. And I've given this example before. If Biden's team really thought that, here's a few questions. One of these I literally just thought of. So if Biden's team really thought that they were up by 10 in his home state of Pennsylvania, would Barack Obama have went there to campaign for him? Like the first place he went to was Pennsylvania, if they thought he was up by 10. Now I know the polls have closed since then, or have tightened since then, but at the time it looked like there's no reason Obama would be there. The other thing is, and maybe it was inevitable that Obama was going to go out and start campaigning for Biden. It seems weird that he just started a couple weeks ago, doesn't it? It seems a little weird that he just started a couple weeks ago. Like that maybe they said, I think we'll be fine. And then they got some internal polling and something happened. And they're like, actually, we need Barry out here. Because it's been obvious this whole time that Barack has not been super thrilled at the idea of Joe Biden being president. Okay. So his mere appearance, I think, says something. And the fact that he appeared in states that it doesn't make sense for you to kind of send your big guns to shows that it's tighter than you think. So my whole point is that I can give you a lot of reasons here. Actually, I'll word it like this. Eric Weinstein talks about proper conspiracy theorizing. And he says, you don't have to, like, what conspiracy theorists get wrong is they think they have to provide an explanation for the thing that doesn't make sense. So I'm not going to do that. And I can give you a few plausible possibilities, but I'm not going to try and give you a decisive reason why the polls are not accurate and why I think they're very obviously not accurate. But I will say that they're obviously not accurate. Again, look at some of these states that were just blowing out the Democrats in terms of where the Republicans are registering new voters. And then you look at what the RCP average is, and it's like Biden's up by plus 11. It's like, does that make any sense? Does that make any sense whatsoever? So I don't have an explanation for it. Scott Adams talks about the dad jokes and how it's people lying to the pollsters. In reality, the few people I know who have gotten calls from pollsters said that they were honest about their support of Trump. Now, they also reported that they said the woman, would say, hey, I have 25 questions. And then like the seventh one is, who are you voting for? Like there's all these demographic questions, and then it's, who are you voting for? And then after the question of who are you voting for, when they would say Trump, the person would say, okay, thank you for your time. And they wouldn't like get to the other 18 questions. So you can do whatever you want with that information, but that does tell me that the few people I do know, so this is of course way anecdotal, the few people I do know who have been polled were honest about their support of Trump. At the same time, they, in every case, they were not asked the full amount of questions they said they were going to be asked. So there's that. So I'm not going to give you a reason definitively why I think the polls are wrong. I think there's a lot of reasons. Some are a little more tinfoil hatty than others. But I just think it's clear that they are not what they seem to be. So I think that the polls being wrong, and there being a lot of data to suggest that they're wrong. Is another one of those things. Okay, election day turnout. High for conservatives, low for Democrats. So here's an interesting thing. I think there could be a reverse effect of what the media is trying to do with some of their like very recent, I'm talking about like last 24, 36 hours on coronavirus stuff, reporting for election day turnout. So a lot of Democrats have, been the main bulk of people that were early voting, early in person, mail-in voting, et cetera. And so what that means, I think as of right now, we're approaching, if not already, at about 100 million people who have already voted, which is crazy. 139 million voted in 2016. So like we're looking at record voter participation in this election. I said, I think easily, like it'll be over 140 or 150 million, right? So it was like, I think it was 129 million last time. And my thought was, we'll be at around 140. So I increased by 11 million. I could see it being closer to 150 even, to be honest, if not more than that. But I think we'll easily hit 140 million people in terms of voting. But the odds of it being a lot higher than that, I think, are also quite high. My point is that what that's going to do, so we have this so think about static versus dynamic states. One of the things that the arguments they've made about not voting on election day is no one wants to wait in line to vote. So there's one thing. No one wants to wait in line to vote, especially during a pandemic. So that's fair enough. Now, what happens if, let's say another 10 million people vote today? I could see that. Let's say that come tomorrow, we'll be at about 100 to 110 million people who have already voted. And if you just take that as a percentage of the people that voted in 2016, that's 110 out of about 130 million. So that leaves about 20 million people. How long are the lines going to be on election day if you have that many people who have already voted? Well, there's still going to be lines. Are they going to be the same length? Are they going to be the same? Like, that's the static picture in people's minds were, oh, no one wants to go out and vote and do all this on election day. Okay, well, they're going to solve that problem. They've already solved that problem, right? I don't think the lines are going to be that long tomorrow. Now, here's a few things that does. it makes it more appealing to go vote if you were considering not doing it and you kind of hadn't, you hadn't really decided and you didn't want to go in person or do that early stuff. You hadn't gotten around to it. It makes it a lot easier and more appealing to go vote in person, right? So there's that. Now, you might say, well, hey, that applies whether you're on the left or on the right. It's true. It's true. Shorter lines make it more appealing to go vote in person. Now, if you're on the left, what I've seen from a lot of news outlets is that they've been trying to remind people about coronavirus. Here's the deaths. Here's the cases. Here's the infections. Here's everything that's going on, right? I had a couple news articles about that in the last, maybe within 20 minutes before I started this. If that's what you're consuming, are you really primarily worried about the lines? Or is it, I'm not going out there. Remember how bad the coronavirus is? So I think that there's a good chance that the shorter lines will help the people on the right way more than the people on the left. That you're going to get way higher voter turnout from the right than you will from the left tomorrow. The other thing is that that's going to cause, so think about this. So let's say, there's this really good barbecue place in Kansas City that I love to go to, but they have like super long lines. And sometimes what you might have is someone gets there and there's happens to be no line. And so they'll like text someone and say, dude, there's actually no line here if you want to come grab some food with me. Right. And so we do this in a lot of places like, hey, this actually wasn't as bad as I thought. You want to, come and join. So you could see people on election day going and saying, wow, the line wasn't that bad, or it wasn't as bad as I thought, or people are wearing masks or something like that. And through social media or through, tweeting out all these pictures, and it increases, people's desire to maybe go and do it. That were maybe otherwise on the fence about it. And I think of the people who are likely to respond to, it being easier to vote on election day, it will be people on the right. So there's that. The last thing that I'll say is, how do I formulate this? Because I just had like 2/3 of a thought. The people that are afraid and who are like boarding up their businesses and who are afraid of violence on election day primarily live in places that are blue. Okay. So I'm not demeaning that. I'm just saying, like, I'm talking about the cities, right? So like, whether it's Atlanta or Washington, D.C. or Chicago or St. Louis or whatever. The people on the right typically aren't as afraid of that kind of thing. Typically, okay. I'm not saying people on the right are braver or anything like that. Aren't as afraid of that kind of thing. So I think there's that as well. And there's a good chance it could even lead to there being less violence tomorrow because there's going to be less people out. Now, I think we're going to have record voter turnout. Yes, voter participation. But I still think there'll just be less people out and about. So we'll see. I really hope I'm wrong about that. Anyway, okay, I already talked about Obama campaigning in Pennsylvania. Here's another one. Okay, so I have 3 more written down, and then I'll kind of give you the arguments against myself here. Okay, maybe four. A lot of the same people agree again. So the people who got it right, and I'm talking about on both sides, the people who got it right in 2016 agree in their predictions, and the people who got it wrong in 2016 also agree in their predictions. So this is all over the place, right? People from Michael Moore to Scott Adams to, I was reading this thread by this pollster, this data guy last night, who's one of the people who got it right. There's other people who got it right in 2016 who virtually all of them agree that Trump's going to win. And all the people who got it wrong in 2016 agree that he's probably not. So what does that tell you? Like, even part of my own reasoning is the fact that my gut, not my gut, or that earlier, the way I was thinking about it until I stopped to like assess how I was thinking about it, I was going, he's not going to win. There's no way he's going to win. I'm like, wait a second. I was just as confident in that thought in 2016. So that right there is almost like, okay, then I should probably go with the opposite. Now, obviously I'm being a little, hyperbolic there, but the point is that the people on both sides agree in the same way that they agreed last time around. So there's something to that. There's something to that. Ben Shapiro doesn't seem like he thinks Trump's going to win this time around, because he's talking about how he could win. Here are the ways he could win. But he doesn't seem like it's going to happen. He hasn't seemed like that for a while. Ben Shapiro bet $10,000 that Trump was going to lose in 2016. How much do I trust his opinion on this? On this, okay? I'm not trying to crap on Ben. Okay, it's just the example that comes to my mind. So the fact that the people on both sides of this agree in the same way that they agreed in 2016, I think shouldn't be ignored. That shouldn't be ignored. Another one, Hunter Biden question. I think that does matter. I think that does matter because it matters among people who aren't enthusiastic for Joe Biden, but we're probably going to go vote on election day. I think there's a lot of things that matter for people who are going to vote in person for Biden, you know, because a lot of the people who were maybe leaning towards Biden, but haven't voted yet because of all the pushes for in-person early voting, probably weren't confident that they were going to vote for Biden. Does that make sense? So if you were confident you were going to vote or for who you're going to vote for, and you're on the left and you're leaning left, you probably do it in person or mail in or whatever, because that's the direction that you're leaning. Probably, right? If you're confident in it. If you're not confident in it, but you're still leaning left, you're probably going to wait till election day because it's like, I just don't know. I don't know. So I think the Hunter Biden question does hurt, like Hunter Biden's business dealing stuff with Jim Biden. And by the way, again, that's not me saying that I think that Joe Biden was doing anything illegal or anything like that. I haven't seen a lot of evidence that he was. And I think there's a difference between knowing your kid was up to shady stuff, but also he's the only, he's the one you got left for the son you have left. I just think that's different. Holy crap, my cat's been here this whole time. Anyway, so there's that. The Supreme Court question, and I kind of addressed that with the known versus unknown entity thing. But that's a question. I think that hurts, the fact that people were like, well, surely we'll get an answer. And then they don't get an answer, and you're the person, like you're on the fence again, I'll vote in person. I think that hurts as well. Yeah, and I guess maybe the last thing I'll say, I had looked at this a second ago, and I thought that maybe there was a fourth one, but just to maybe kind of restate differently, there are a lot of entities that should have lost total credibility over the last 4 years because of their claims about different things. So whether you're CNN or MSNBC or NPR, NBC or whatever, New York Times, Washington Post, with your claim, whether it's about Russia collusion or Ukraine or, the Fine People hoax or whatever, or their thoughts on what was going to happen in 2016. Those same entities all are like, Biden's going to win, he's got this. And you're starting to see some of them go, well, here's Trump's path to victory. Here's a way that Trump could win. There's a part of me that says, if the way that I was previously framing or thinking about why he was going to lose was largely influenced by people who make a career out of being wrong, I'm not sure that I need to be considering that as much as I have been. So there's that. Now I'll shoot a few holes in what I just said, and you can tell me, how much it matters. The same thing about Obama going out there and hitting the campaign trail for Trump, or obviously for Biden, can be said about the fact that Trump is doing like 5 rallies a day, like I said earlier. So why is he doing so many rallies, and just working himself to death right now, if he doesn't also think it's really close, right? Why is he doing all these in Pennsylvania and in Wisconsin and other places, right? So, there is something to be said about that. The fact that I can't explain why, exactly why the polls might be wrong. I'm not going to say it's just because people doing dad jokes, as much as I respect Scott. I just don't think that is a plausible, singular causal, or primarily causal explanation there. I just don't see that. The fact that the things that were previously feeding into why I thought he was going to lose haven't changed that I know of. I haven't seen new information that conservatives now heavily approve, or people generally heavily approve, of the administration's COVID response, right? So there's that. Like, they all remain. The question is, how important are they? So my thought is they aren't as important as they used to be. That's my main thing, is I don't think they're as important as they used to be. I don't think the second debate is as important as it used to be. Or sorry, the first debate, because of what happened in the second. So I think there's a lot of things that I realized the more I was thinking about who I thought was going to win and why I thought Trump was going to lose, I realized I was operating on really outdated, not really, but in this news cycle, yeah, you know, I was operating on outdated and probably outdated information, and probably using some paradigms that I needed to rethink. So that's why I think Trump's going to win the election. The presidency, we'll see. I think if all of our systems and institutions and everything function as they're supposed to, and any potential for, meddling or messing around isn't decisive, then I think that, I think he's going to win. So those are the things. Those are why I think that. You can do what you want with that. I was a little kind of thrown off by my cat. I'm like, I really hope she doesn't jump up here and knock the camera or the mic off or something. That's it. I'll end it there. You can just tell me what you think, leave a comment, whatever. I'm going to be doing a live stream tomorrow on election day, starting at, I think, 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific, somewhere around there. Might try to make it a little earlier. We'll see. Kevin from Engineering Politics and I are going to do a live stream. We're going to have other people on from the locals community. We're going to be talking about stuff and just watching it and assessing it together. So we shall see. That is it. I'm excited to see what you guys think and why you think that. But either way, we will find out. And here's the other thing I'm going to say. I think we're going to know with a pretty high degree of certainty the results tomorrow. I think we're going to know that, because all of these questions about how they count and how they, everything's going to get overloaded. They've been working that out for the past several weeks, if not months. Actually, definitely months. So I think that it's actually going to go a little smoother than we think, to be totally honest. Are there going to be hiccups? Yeah. Are there going to be monkey wrenches? Sure. Of course. It's 2020, right? But I think that we're going to actually know with a pretty high degree of certainty the results of the election tomorrow. Again, not the same as the presidency. When you have both sides who are going to contest it no matter what happens, we have no idea what the results, in terms of who's going to be the president will be. But anyway, okay, all right, that's it. This kind of thing you're into, please like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. That's at My Mundane Mind. Sub on YouTube. That's a Return to Reason. Join my locals community. I am so happy. Locals has been so great lately with people having these conversations and sharing really interesting links to articles and stuff. Like, you guys are awesome. So if you're not over there, you need to come join it and check it out. And if you are there, just big shout out to you guys. It has been it seriously warms my heart. I love it. So go check it out if you're not over there, please. And Medium, I posted an article on Medium about my thoughts about what's at stake in the election. And so I post things on there, ThinkSpot, so on and so forth. So, all right, that's it. And I will see you tomorrow, right? This is not the purge. It's an election. So let's not act like it's the purge, even though it kind of does feel like the purge. Anyway, all right, see you tomorrow. Peace.